The emergency alarm screamed through the massive crystal halls of the Galactic Council building. Representatives from dozens of worlds rushed to their seats as red warning lights flashed everywhere. Admiral Kexathera of the Zentari Defense Fleet stood at the center of the great chamber, her forearms moving quickly over the holographic controls. "Council members," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Our deep space sensors have detected something terrible. The energy signatures match our oldest records. The Devourers are returning." A cold silence fell over the room. The insect-like hive representatives clicked their mandibles nervously. The rock-skinned granite folk turned darker shades of gray. Even the floating energy beings of the Void Collective dimmed their usual bright glow. Council Leader Mordak, a tall reptilian with green scales, stood up slowly. His clawed hands trembled as he accessed the ancient war records on his personal display. "How long has it been?" he asked quietly. 312 years since the last Devourer ship was seen," replied the Admiral. "We thought they were gone forever." Representative Telvara, speaking for the Crystal Mines, projected her thoughts into the chamber. "The old records speak of allies who fought beside us in the Great War, beings called humans. They helped us defeat the Devourers before." "Fairy tales," snorted Counselor Vexmar, his tentacles waving dismissively. "Humans are extinct. They vanished right after the war ended. No one has seen them for centuries. We face this threat alone." Admiral Kexathera activated the main display, showing a three-dimensional map of their galaxy. Red dots were moving slowly but steadily from the outer rim toward the populated worlds. "Preliminary scans show at least 50 massive bioships. They're bigger than anything we faced before." The chamber erupted in worried chatter. Representatives began frantically sending messages to their home worlds. Some were already talking about surrender terms. "Silence," roared Mordak, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "We survived them once. We can do it again." But privately, he wasn't so sure. The old war records were incomplete, many files corrupted or classified beyond even his access level. What he could read painted a grim picture of the original conflict. Worlds consumed, entire species wiped out, billions dead before the tide finally turned. Dr. Yothar, the Council's chief historian, cleared his throat nervously. "If I may, Council Leader, there are some interesting details in the archived battle reports. The humans seem to employ very unusual tactics. They never retreated, even when facing impossible odds." "What kind of tactics?" asked Admiral Kexathera. "Difficult to say. Many records were sealed after the war, but the few reports I can access mention something called improvised warfare and references to human unpredictability being their greatest weapon." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, an automated monitoring station registered the approaching Devourer fleet. Its ancient computers, dormant for 3 centuries, suddenly came alive. Deep in its memory banks, pre-programmed instructions began executing. A tight beam transmission shot out toward a distant star system that appeared empty on all galactic charts. Back in the council chamber, evacuation orders were being prepared for the outer rim colonies. Merchant ships were being converted into refugee transports. The military was mobilizing every available vessel, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. "The fortress world of Kepler Prime will be their first major target," Admiral Kexathera explained, pointing to the tactical display. "It guards our main shipping routes. If it falls, they'll have a clear path to the core worlds." "How long do we have?" asked Mordak. "Based on their current speed, perhaps 2 weeks before they reach our outer defenses. Maybe less if they've improved their propulsion systems." The weight of the situation settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. 300 years of peace and prosperity were about to end. The galaxy's greatest nightmare was returning, and they had no idea how to stop it. As the emergency session continued late into the night, none of the council members noticed a small indicator light blinking quietly on the deep space monitoring board. The automated beacon had been activated. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, its signal was being received. But the humans were supposed to be extinct. Everyone knew that. The galaxy would have to face the Devourers alone, just as Counselor Vexmar had said. There was no cavalry coming to save them this time. The great crystal doors of the council chamber sealed shut as the representatives dispersed to prepare their worlds for war. In the empty hall, holographic displays continued showing the approaching red dots creeping ever closer to the heart of galactic civilization. Admiral Kexathera remained behind, staring at the tactical display. She had studied every available record of the original Devourer War. The casualties had been staggering. Entire fleets wiped out in single battles. Planets stripped bare of all life in a matter of hours. Humans, she whispered to herself. If you're really out there somewhere, we need you now more than ever. But space remained silent and the red dots kept moving closer. Dr. Yuntara floated through the abandoned research station, her tentacles gripping the cold metal walls as she moved toward the ancient data storage facility. The station had been drifting in space for over 200 years, forgotten after the Great War ended. But now, with the Devourers returning, every piece of old information had become precious. The power cells still worked, barely. Emergency. Lighting cast eerie shadows as she connected her equipment to the main computer core. Static filled her helmet speakers as the old systems came online. Computer, show me all files related to the Devourer War, she commanded. Access restricted, came the mechanical reply. Command authorization required, Dr. Yuntara sighed. Even now, centuries later, the military kept their secrets. She tried a different approach. Show me battlefield recordings, public access only. The holographic display flickered to life, showing grainy footage from a battle long ago. The image. Quality was poor, but she could make out the distinctive bioships of the Devourers attacking a space station. Then something unexpected appeared on screen. Small fighters, crude and boxy compared to modern ships, were engaging the enemy vessels. But these pilots fought differently than anything she had ever seen. They flew straight into danger, taking hits that should have destroyed them, yet somehow continuing to fight. Enhance Section 47, she ordered. The image zoomed in on one of the strange fighters. Through the cockpit window she could see the pilot, a bipedal creature with dark hair and pale skin. The nameplate on his flight suit read, Lee. As she watched, the human pilot's ship took a direct hit from a Devourer bioweapon. The hull cracked, atmosphere leaked out, but the pilot kept fighting. His weapons were primitive, but he used them in ways no military academy would teach. Instead of maintaining safe distance, he flew directly at the enemy, using his damaged ship as a battering ram. Incredible, Dr. Yuntara whispered. The recording switched to ground combat footage. Human soldiers were defending a corridor against 3 massive Devourer shock troops. Each enemy was twice the size of a human, with razor-sharp claws and acid-spitting capability. By all logic, the humans should have been overwhelmed in seconds. Instead, they fought with a fury that defied explanation. One soldier, wounded and bleeding, threw himself at a Devourer's legs, allowing his companions to attack from above. Another used an empty weapon as a club when his ammunition ran out. They moved with coordination, but also with individual creativity that confused their enemies. The footage cut to static just as massive explosions lit up the background. Across the galaxy, Admiral Kexathera was receiving reports that turned her blood cold. The fortress world of Arcturus Prime, one of their strongest defensive positions, had fallen in just 6 hours. The Devourers' new bioships had adapted to every weapon the Council forces used against them. How is this possible? She demanded, reviewing the battle data. Our weapons worked against them before. Her tactical officer, a young Zentari named Pexhan, pointed to the analysis screens. Admiral, their biotechnology has evolved. Every time we hit them with plasma cannons, their hulls adapted. When we switched to kinetic weapons, they grew thicker armor. It's like they're learning from each attack. The evacuation of 3 Mori, Outer Rim colonies, was already underway. Refugee ships filled the space lanes, carrying millions of frightened civilians toward the inner worlds. But everyone knew the inner worlds wouldn't be safe for long. Meanwhile, Dr. Yuntara continued watching the ancient recordings. She had found more footage of human combat tactics. In one recording, a group of human Marines was trapped in a damaged ship with no way out. Instead of surrendering, they rigged the ship's reactor to explode and rammed it into a Devourer command vessel. "They're insane," she muttered, but with admiration in her voice. Another recording showed humans fighting inside a Devourer bioship. The organic corridors pulsed with alien life, and the walls tried to crush the invaders. But the humans adapted quickly, using the ship's own biology against it. They injected toxins into the walls, turned the ship's immune system against itself. What impressed her most was their refusal to give up. In every recording, no matter how bad the situation became, the humans kept fighting. They seemed to have no concept of impossible odds. The recordings ended abruptly, all dated from the final weeks of the war. After that, nothing. The humans had simply vanished. Back on the Council's main battle station, emergency meetings continued, around the clock. Military leaders from dozens of species shared their concerns and fears. The Devourers were advancing faster than predicted, and their new abilities made old battle plans useless. "We need new strategies," Admiral Kexathera announced to the War Council. "Everything we know about fighting them is outdated." "What about the human tactics?" suggested Dr. Yilthar, who had been studying the same recordings. "They seem to have success against the Devourers." "Suicide attacks and berserker charges?" scoffed General Morketh of the ground forces. "That's not tactics, that's madness." But as reports of more defeats came in, even the skeptics began to wonder. Maybe madness was exactly what they needed. In the depths of space, the automated beacon continued transmitting its signal into the void, waiting for an answer that everyone believed would never come. Deep beneath the surface of a world that appeared, barren and lifeless on all galactic star charts, massive doors groaned open for the first time in 3 centuries. The sound echoed through underground tunnels that stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath artificial mountains and fake desert landscapes. Commander Park Jiho stood in the central command center, watching dozens of holographic displays come to life around him. His dark eyes reflected the blue glow of tactical screens showing real-time intelligence from across the galaxy. At 35 years old, he had trained his entire life for this moment, just like his father and grandfather before him. "Sir, all monitoring stations are reporting in," announced Lieutenant Kim Mire from her position at the communications console. "The automated systems confirm the Devourers have returned. 17 worlds have already fallen to their advanced fleets." Park nodded grimly. The elders had been right. They had predicted this day would come, even when the rest of the galaxy celebrated permanent peace. While other species forgot about the ancient threat, humanity had never stopped preparing. "Signal all division commanders," Park ordered. "Begin Phase 1 awakening procedures. It's time to honor the old promise." Throughout the vast underground cities of New Teguk, alarms began sounding. Not emergency warnings, but the signal everyone had waited generations to hear. In training facilities carved from solid rock, men and women stopped their exercises and looked up with mixture of excitement and dread. Children who had learned military tactics alongside basic mathematics finally understood why their education had been so different from their ancestors' stories of peaceful civilizations. Captain Song Ki-woo emerged from the pilot simulation chambers where he had spent the morning practicing attack runs against holographic Devourer bioships. His hands were steady, his movements precise. Unlike the original human fighters who had learned to battle the Devourers through trial and deadly error, Song had trained against perfect computer models of enemy capabilities. "All squadron leaders report to Hangar Bay 7, came the announcement over the intercom. "This is not a drill. In the weapons development labs, Dr. Nam Dahi powered up systems that had been theoretical designs just days before. The sleek silver devices hummed with energy that seemed to bend light around them. These weren't the crude kinetic weapons their ancestors had used. 300 years of focused research had produced armaments specifically designed to counter Devourer biotechnology. The adaptive frequency disruptors are ready for field testing," she reported to the command center. "Preliminary simulations show they should prevent the enemy hulls from adapting to our attacks." Park studied the tactical displays showing the galaxy's current situation. The Galactic Council's forces were retreating on all fronts. Their conventional weapons had proved useless against the evolved Devourer bioships. Fear was spreading through the core worlds as millions of refugees fled the advancing enemy. "They're fighting the same war they fought 3 centuries ago," observed Major Baek Sung-hwan, the chief tactical analyst. "Same strategies, same weapons, same thinking. The Devourers have evolved, but the galaxy hasn't." "That's why we're here," Park replied quietly. The hangar bays began opening, revealing ships that looked nothing like the primitive vessels shown in the old war recordings. These craft were elegant and deadly, their hulls covered in adaptive armor that could shift configuration mid-battle. The engines used technology that made them nearly impossible to track on conventional sensors. Captain Song walked through Hangar Bay 7, inspecting his fighter squadron. Each pilot had been training since childhood for this mission. They knew Devourer tactics better than the Devourers themselves, having studied every recorded battle, analyzed every defeat and victory from the original war. "Remember what makes us different," Song told his pilots as they prepared for launch. "We don't just adapt to the enemy, we make them adapt to us. And when they think they understand our patterns, we change everything." In the command center, Park opened a secure channel to the hidden human fleets positioned throughout the galaxy. For 300 years, small groups of humans had lived in secret installations, asteroid bases, and camouflaged ships. They had watched galactic civilization grow and prosper, while maintaining their vigil against the day the Devourers returned. "All fleet commanders, this is New Taguk Command," Park transmitted. "Operation Homecoming is now active. Begin movement to designated positions." The response came from dozens of locations, some from the edges of known space, others from hiding places within the galaxy's busiest trade routes. Captain Cho Yuna reported from the Rim territories, where her stealth ships had been monitoring the Devourer advance. Commander Lee Minsu confirmed his battle group was moving toward the embattled Kepler defense line. "The Council forces don't know we're coming," observed Dr. Nam Dahi. 3 centuries of isolation. They probably think we're extinct." "Let them think that a little longer," Park replied. "Surprise is our greatest advantage." As the massive, underground facilities came fully online, thousands of humans emerged from their hidden existence. They had lived like ghosts, watching the galaxy forget about them while they prepared for this inevitable day. Their children had been raised on stories of duty and sacrifice, trained from birth to fight an enemy most species considered ancient history. The first human ships began launching from concealed bases across dozens of star systems. Their destination, the front lines where Galactic Council forces were making their desperate last stand against an enemy they couldn't defeat. Park looked at the tactical display one final time, before giving the order that would reveal humanity's survival to a galaxy that had forgotten them. "All units, begin final approach. It's time to come home." Admiral Kexathara watched her tactical display with growing horror. The Rigel defense line, their strongest military position, was crumbling before her eyes. Devourer bioships tore through, the defensive formations like sharp claws through thin fabric. Red warning lights flashed across her bridge as ship after ship reported critical damage or complete destruction. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the 7th Fleet," her communications officer reported, his voice shaking. "The Devourers are pushing toward the core worlds. We have maybe 6 hours before they reach civilian populations." Kexthera closed her eyes for a moment. In 6 hours, billions would die. The evacuation ships couldn't move fast enough. The refugee convoys were already overcrowded and breaking down. This was how galactic civilization would end, not with glory but with desperate retreat and overwhelming defeat. "Prepare the retreat order," she said quietly. "All remaining ships fall back to—" "Admiral!" her sensor operator suddenly shouted. "Unknown contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Massive energy signatures detected." The main display changed to show space around the battlefield. Dozens of sleek ships materialized from nowhere, their hulls gleaming silver against the stars. They moved with deadly grace, immediately engaging the Devourer biocruisers with weapons that lit up space like miniature suns. "Where did they come from?" Kexathera demanded. "I want identification now." The unknown ships fought differently than anything she had ever seen. Their fighters danced between enemy fire with impossible skill, taking risks that should have gotten them killed, but somehow pulling through every time. Their larger vessels used weapons that seemed to tear through Devourer adaptive armor, like it was made of paper. One of the mysterious fighters streaked past her bridge viewports, and Kexthara caught a glimpse of the pilot through the cockpit window. The figure looked familiar somehow, like something from old recordings and half-remembered stories. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel," her communications officer announced. "Put it through." A face appeared on the main screen, bipedal with dark hair and determined brown eyes. The creature spoke in accented but clear galactic common language. "This is Captain Nam Dahi of the Human Remnant Fleet. We're here to fulfill an old promise." The bridge fell silent. Kexthara stared at the screen in disbelief. "Impossible. Humans are extinct." "Our records show," Captain Nam smiled grimly. "Reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated, Admiral. We've been watching, waiting, preparing. We know these enemies better than anyone." On the battlefield, human ships were proving their captain's words. They attacked Devourer vessels with tactics that seemed to come from nowhere. When bioships tried to adapt their hulls to human weapons, the humans simply switched to completely different attack patterns. When Devourer fighters tried to surround them, human pilots did things that defied every rule of space combat. Captain Song Ki-woo led his fighter squadron in a attack run that made veteran pilots gasp in amazement. Instead of maintaining safe distance, his ships flew directly into the bioship formations, using their own vessels as shields while targeting critical weak points that only humans seemed to know about. "How do they know where to hit?" wondered Commander Pexhan, watching the tactical display. "They're targeting areas our sensors can't even detect." "They've been studying these things for 300 years, Admiral Kexthara realized. "While we forgot about the Devourers, the humans never stopped learning." The tide of battle began to turn. Devourer bioships that had seemed unstoppable suddenly found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned. Human boarding parties stormed enemy vessels with the same fierce determination their ancestors had shown, but now they carried weapons designed specifically to counter biotechnology. Major Baek Shungwan led one such boarding team onto a Devourer command ship. The organic corridors pulsed around them, trying to crush the invaders with living walls. But the humans had trained for this exact situation. They moved through the bioship like they owned it, knowing exactly which nerve centers to target and which organic systems to disable. "The ship is trying to adapt to our presence," reported one of his Marines as the walls began secreting acid to dissolve their armor. "Switch to Protocol 7, Beck ordered calmly. The Marines immediately changed their approach, using neutralizing agents that turned the ship's own defenses against itself. Within minutes, the massive biovessel was paralyzed, its crew helpless, as human forces took control of critical systems. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human knowledge and preparation overcame Devourer evolution. Ships that had adapted to resist every galactic weapon found themselves defenseless against human tactics they had never encountered. "Admiral," Captain Nam's voice came through the communication channel again. "We're sending you our tactical frequencies. Coordinate your remaining ships with our formations. We can win this, but we need to work together." Kexthara looked around her bridge at her officers' amazed faces. Hope was returning to eyes that had been filled with despair just minutes before. "Accepted, Captain. All ships, follow human command protocols. Today we learn how to fight like humans." As the combined fleet pressed their advantage, driving the Devourers back from the core worlds, word spread throughout the galaxy. The humans had returned. The Guardians who had vanished after the First War were back, stronger than ever, ready to fulfill their ancient promise to protect galactic civilization. The impossible had happened. Humanity's greatest fighters had come home. The final battle raged in the darkness near the galactic rim, where the massive Devourer command cluster hung like a diseased growth among the stars. Captain Song Ki-woo led the assault on the primary bioship, a creature the size of a small moon that pulsed with malevolent life. His strike team moved through its organic corridors with practiced efficiency, their boots squelching on surfaces that felt more like flesh than metal. "Remember the training," Song called to his Marines as they advanced deeper into the living ship. "These things learn from every move we make, but they can't adapt to what they can't predict." The corridor walls suddenly contracted, trying to crush the invaders. But instead of retreating, Song's team split into 3 groups and moved in completely different directions. When biosensors tried to track them, the humans used signal jammers that mimicked the ship's own neural patterns, confusing its defense systems. Sergeant Li Wujin planted charges on what looked like random wall sections, but were actually critical nerve clusters that only humans knew how to identify. 30 seconds to detonation, he announced. The explosions rippled through the bioship's nervous system, causing it to convulse in pain and confusion. Its adaptive defenses began working against each other, trying to counter attacks that were already over while ignoring the real threats advancing toward its brain center. Commander Park Ji-ho watched the battle from his flagship, coordinating dozens of similar assaults across the enemy fleet. 300 years of preparation were paying off in ways the galaxy had never imagined. While other species had developed better technology, humans had developed better understanding of their enemies. "Sir, the Devourer command structure is beginning to collapse," reported Dr. Kim Mirai from her analysis station. "Their bioships are losing coordination. They're starting to attack each other." This was the key insight that had taken humans centuries to discover. The Devourers weren't just individual ships. They were parts of a larger organism that communicated through bio-neural networks. Disrupt those networks in the right way, and the entire fleet became confused and helpless. Admiral Kexathera watched in amazement as Devourer vessels that had seemed unstoppable began drifting aimlessly through space. Some fired on their own allies. Others simply shut down, their crews apparently abandoning ship in strange organic escape pods. "How did you know?" she asked Captain Nam De-hee, whose ship was coordinating the final cleanup operations. "We studied them," Nam replied simply. "While the galaxy celebrated peace, we spent 300 years learning everything about our enemies. We dissected captured biotechnology, analyzed their communication patterns, even learned their reproductive cycles. We became experts on how to kill them." The last Devourer command ship exploded in a brilliant flash of bioenergy, its death scream echoing across subspace frequencies. Across the battlefield, surviving enemy vessels began fleeing toward deep space, their coordinated attack falling apart without central control. Captain Song emerged from the ruined bioship, his armor scorched but his team intact. "Target eliminated," he reported. "The primary neural nexus is destroyed. Any remaining Devourers are now just individual ships without higher coordination." The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Devourer threat was ended. Worlds that had been preparing for evacuation began celebrating instead. Refugee ships turned around and headed home. Children who had never known anything but fear finally learned what safety felt like. But the biggest shock was still to come. In the great crystal chamber of the Galactic Council, representatives gathered to hear the truth from the humans themselves. Commander Park stood before the same assembly where humanity had once been declared extinct, his calm voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. "We never left," he explained to the stunned audience. "We withdrew to prepare. Our ancestors knew the Devourers would return someday, so we dedicated our entire civilization to getting ready for that day." Council leader Mordak leaned forward in his seat. "But why the deception? Why let us believe you were gone?" "Because the galaxy needed to forget about the war," Park replied. "You needed to grow, to prosper, to build something worth protecting. We became the guardians in the shadows, watching over you while you created the peaceful civilization we're all fighting to preserve." Representative Telvara of the Crystal Mines projected her thoughts into the chamber. "Will you stay now? Will humanity rejoin the galactic community?" Park looked around at the faces of dozens of species, all waiting for his answer. "We never truly left it. We simply became its protectors from the darkness. But yes, it's time to stand in the light again." The years that followed brought changes no one had expected. Human military doctrine was integrated into galactic defense strategies. Human children attended schools alongside young aliens, teaching them the arts of creative thinking and stubborn determination. The galaxy learned that sometimes the best way to solve a problem was to refuse to accept that it couldn't be solved. Indy, the rebuilt world of Arcturus Prime, now stronger than ever, memorial gardens honored all who had died in both Devourer wars. But the most visited memorial was a simple plaque that read, "To those who watch in the darkness, so others may live in the light." Commander Park, now promoted to general, stood before that memorial on the anniversary of the final battle. His daughter played nearby with friends from a dozen different species, their laughter echoing across the peaceful garden. The galaxy was safe. The Guardians had returned home. And if darkness ever threatened again, humanity would be ready.